Hey, ladies and gentlemen, this is Luminous coming you guys on a video named Choke Point Jungling. Choke Point Jungling is a technique that's been around since its Dota 1 days, and I was the original creator of it back in Dota 1 with the help of a guy named Noob. But since the jungle has changed from Dota 1 to Dota 2, this is the updated version of the Choke Point Jungling guide. For those of you guys that don't know, Choke Point Jungling is the technique of positioning a hero in such a way that you are only tanking one neutral creep at a time. Choke Point Jungling requires a couple of things. First, it requires you to be able to eat the correct trees, and secondly, it requires you to face only against melee creeps. So for example here, we're going to be eating one tree at this high level camp, and you can see that these melee creeps are trying to funnel through this one choke point, and because of that, Nyx could be only tanking one creep at a time while attacking the higher level creep here, and basically sustaining very little damage. Earlier I talked about how Choke Point Jungling is not going to be useful against range creeps. You can see the reason why. Because we're using these funnel points, range creeps do not care about it at all, they will just attack you. And for that reason, we're not going to be going over the choke points of the level 1 camp as well as the ancient camps. Choke point for those camps do exist, but because of the high rate of spawning a range camp there's really no point, as Choke Point Jungling is going to be somewhat ineffective most of the time. We're going to be showing through the Radiant jungle first, and then we're going to be moving to the Dire jungle. Choke Point Jungling is somewhat easier to do on the Radiant jungle side, as you're tanking less damage, and there's more camps in closer proximity that you're going to be Choke Point Jungling. On the Dire side, as you guys will see a little bit later, you got to travel a little bit further away, and the camps that you're tackling are going to be a little bit more difficult. For this particular camp, there is actually no tree that you gotta eat. You just actually put yourself in this one tiny niche spot. And that is gonna be it for this particular jungle. This is the only camp in the Radiant jungle that you will not be using a Tango or Quelling Blade to cutting through, but precisely positioning yourself there so that you're not gonna be taking that much damage. As you can see, most of these camps, or in fact all of these camps, you're only tanking one neutral creep at a time. And here are all the spots where you're gonna be tangling through, or position yourself through, so that you're only going to be tanking one creep at a time. With that, let's move to the Dire jungle. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Dire jungle is going to be a little bit more difficult when it comes down to Choke Point Jungling. And also, Choke Point Jungling is a technique that you could put into many of your other jungling techniques, such as pulling and stacking. So for example here, I'm showcasing a stack. And generally, I recommend you to heavily stack before actually tackling Choke Point Jungling. And the reason being so, since you basically just are tanking one creep at a time, it doesn't really matter that you're stacking because you're going to be sustaining the same damage regardless. And stacking actually lessens your travel distance from one camp to the next as you finish the camp. So as you're stacking, you're actually increasing your gold intake. So these are some of the examples of camp that you can stack because, again, you're going to be tanking one creep at a time anyways, so it doesn't really matter how big the camp is. All it matters is that you're not going to die as you're lifestealing through. Again, as I'm mentioning, Lifestealer is a great hero for this technique, but other lifesteal based heroes are not too bad, such as Bloodbath from Bloodseeker or Skeleton King, provided you have the correct starting items for jungling. This is the high level camp on the right side here for the Dire jungle. Again, you got to keep in mind that if you see a Dark Troll Warlord spawn camp, you cannot use the technique against range creeps. This camp also requires no tangling through. You're just putting yourself in a position that only one melee creep could attack you at the same time. Be careful when you're using your tangos on some of the choke points, as it will destroy your choke. This is the last camp on the Dire side jungle that you could use Choke Point Jungling. Now you might notice there's one more camp that I did not cover, and that camp you really can't find a choke point because there's no choke point that exists. For this camp, you can see that I'm purposely moving myself. This is a wrong Choke Point Jungling spot, as you can be attacked by two creeps at once. You want to stand at that spot where Lifestealer is standing in right now. If you move a little bit too further back, you will be able to be pincer in from both sides. So be careful with positioning, particularly in this camp, as it is most difficult. And here are all the trees or all the spots you'll be going to for the Dire Choke Point Jungling. Again, there's only 3 camps here that you could use on the Dire side, so this technique a little bit more useful on the Radiant side. And that's it. Hope you guys have fun jungling, and this has been a video made by Luminous. Thank you guys for supporting me, and share it with your friends if you found it helpful. Until next time, this is Luminous signing off. To you guys.